Good morning, everyone, on this dreary day. So chilly, so cold, and it's rainy, and somehow we're still making it to the podcast. Welcome to Insights from the Couch with Dr. Anamaria, who is back. Last week, I had an episode with LCSW Alexia, and she talked about her trauma. And now, today, after talking with Alexia, it got me to thinking, her trauma history, her parents died at a very young age, very tragic, a lot of mental illness in that family, a lot of really terrible pain and generational pain. And so, as I was talking to her, someone that literally spent 12 years in the foster care system, somebody that lost everything at such a young age, after talking with her, it got me to thinking, what is generational trauma? What is family trauma? How do we identify ourselves beyond our trauma? And then, Dr. Ana Maria, I know that you um, have been exploring a lot of the family constellation, which is a revolutionary new form of addressing generational trauma. So we're going to jump right in. We have a lot to talk about in a short period of time, and it's some really deep stuff. So I'm excited. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Ana Maria, owner of Seven Counseling. Um, let's have you introduce yourself, and then I'll jump into the identity question.
Of course. Thank you, Jalili, so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to do this podcast with you. So thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. So here's something that I've observed over the years with my patients, and then now talking with other providers and other guests in the podcast. I've seen how trauma can become essentially the stamp that people put on their forehead that says, "This is who I am as a person." Like, and a lot of self identity comes from people's trauma, whether it's the choices that they make. Oh, well, that's because I'm this, or that's because my mother did this, or that's because my father did this, or that's because I never knew my parents. Or, deciding that, well, I can't change my behaviors because it's a generational curse or it's generational trauma. So even if I wanted to, and you see that a lot in situations like alcoholism in a family, addiction, domestic violence, violence in general. You see the grandparent doing it, then the parent doing it, then the child doing it onto their children, and so on and so on and so on. And so we sometimes feel the need to identify as something specific, create our own role in a family and our role in the world. And so we might gravitate towards the one thing that we have thought about the most or that we've put the most emphasis on, and that might be your identity and your trauma. So one of the
Mm.
reasons why I really feel passionate about doing this particular podcast series on trauma is because I want to step away from that, because I truly and honestly believe that you have inherent worth. I believe that just by the fact that you were born and that you're part of this universe and that you belong here, you have worth and that you're important in your own way, and that you don't have to define yourself by what other people's experiences have put you through or what other people's experiences have been. And so let's jump in. Dr. Ana Maria, let's start by defining some of what we would call the roles in a family. I think a lot of people are going to understand this one, so I think it's an easy intro.
Yeah, this is something that has been in place for over a century. And like what we do in psychology is we like to understand human behavior and kind of classify it. So there are different roles in family dynamics that we can call dysfunctional. I happen to believe that every family has dysfunction. maybe small dysfunction, big dysfunction, but no one is perfect. So you can see these roles in families. You were able to see it better when families were larger last century, with baby boomers, of course. But as people are choosing to have only one child or two, it's still applicable, but it's not as visible. So I'm sure that the listeners have heard about birth order, and that has sometimes a lot of bearing. Like the oldest child becomes very responsible for the family, for the siblings, and they carry that torch of success that they have to be successful. Yes or yes, and maybe the baby is the forgotten child, and so those are. I'm sure that the listeners are familiar somewhat with these roles, but basically, we have the scapegoat, and that would be the person that is irresponsible, that causes a lot of chaos in the family system, the black sheep, the person that is making the wrong decisions, that drops out of school, that has addiction problems, behavioral problems. We have the hero, the family hero, which is typically the oldest child, and that person is hyper responsible. They bear perfectionism. They have to be successful in life, and sometimes, like I mentioned before, they're responsible for the siblings. We have the mascot or the clown, which is often the baby of the family, and they can't do wrong. It's like, oh, they're so cute. Oh, they crashed the car. Oh, but that's just so and so, that's just they are babied, and whatever behavior they do is seen like funny and celebrated as clownish, right? And then we have the lost child. That tends to be the kids in the middle, that feel like nothing is for them. They're not in the top, they're not at the bottom, they're just lost in the shuffle, and they're very lonely. Sometimes they feel insecure. They don't talk a lot. They're just invisible. They feel invisible. So basically, those are the roles that you can find in some family dynamics. The enabler is another one that I forgot to mention, and that one is the peacekeeper. That one is the one that doesn't rock the boat, that probably is going to be taking almost a parental role because they have to be like super level headed, adulting early, and that's pretty much it. I know that other things have been added recently. So the original roles that I mentioned, I think that the newer studies have added a couple more roles to that, which are the manipulator and the symptom barrier. But basically, those are the things that you can see in a family dynamic that is dysfunctional. But like I said, every family is dysfunctional, so all of us probably can identify with a role in a family. I can tell you that as an only child. I know, please don't. I know what comes with that. As an only child, I can tell you that definitely a family hero was a stamp that I had in my forehead, that I had to be successful, and I had to be great at what I did. And also a little bit of clownish too, because I was babied, and I was just the only one. So those are mixtures between family roles that I can identify in my family system. And the fact that there are different roles doesn't mean that you don't have a little bit of two. You can go like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I've been the scapegoat, but I also been the lost child. So those more or less are the roles that we can see in family dynamics.
Yeah, I definitely agree that's it's not just one particular role. Sometimes you start as the lost child and then you eventually become the black sheep as you get older and your decisions lead to that. Or sometimes you're the baby and life situations puts you in a position where you end up becoming the savior. So like roles do kind of mesh sometimes within the family,
Hmm.
but there's a very critical part to that, and that is no matter what, there's always the stamp of something. You're always
Yes, yes,
labeled as something, and
yes.
the more you identify with that label, the more you become that person.
Yes, I'm glad that you're touching on this. I have had several clients, actually. One person particularly comes to mind, that was playing the role of the scapegoat, and the family rejected his behavior earlier on as a tween, as a teenager, a young adult, and he managed to become very successful in the medical field. And still, after the success that he achieved intellectually, professionally, financially, the family continued to treat him like the scapegoat, like he was
Mhm.
still this black sheep, you know? So you're absolutely correct. Once you have that stamp on, it's very, very hard to get out of it. And that's when we have to set some boundaries with family, which becomes a hard thing to do as adults.
I was just gonna talk about boundaries, yes. And because it's just goes hand in hand because here's the thing. You will have this family system around you keeping you in the role. It is part of the dynamic of the family. You cannot rock the boat in that dynamic situation because if you do, everybody's troubled by it. Everybody's disturbed by it. So if you are the savior, goodness forbid that you have a bad experience, you have a divorce, or you have a run-in with with the law, or you have anything that happens, you're the savior, and something happens that brings you down from the pedestal, and the entire family falls apart because they cannot understand that you have stepped away from the role. If you're the scapegoat and you become a successful person, or you become someone that can be independent and not the codependent person that everybody uses and that is the yes man to the family, they will come at you. They will come at you like hyenas. Like they will be like, why have you changed? You're not the same. You used to be so wonderful. We used to love you. We used to care about you. So this
Mm.
goes hand in hand with this concept of us feeling like we have to maintain the identity, even if it no longer fits us, even if it no longer feels right, even if we've grown past it, we have to maintain the identity because the family forces us by sheer power of will to stay there because that's what they're comfortable with.
Exactly. That's absolutely correct. And another thing that I think is worth mentioning is that because of this identity, we also see some adult patterns that happen with different transactions socially, not only with family, but we have those patterns with the rest of the people that we get close to. It could be a partner, it could be a work relationship. So we have to be aware of what those patterns are first and foremost. And I would suggest to the people that are listening to really look into the characteristics more in depth of these family roles and identify themselves with the family roles. I oftentimes do that with my clients when they come in. I try to understand their family history and I try to understand what role were they playing in that family system because those adult patterns are going to help us heal. It doesn't matter if your family doesn't want to acknowledge that you're not that. That's again when you set the boundaries. And sometimes we have to separate from our family if they choose to continue to put us in that space where we don't want to be. I'm not talking about cutting ties completely, but definitely just setting a healthy space between family and us.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about family constellation?
Yes, yes, of course. Thank you for asking about that. It was very exciting how I came across this. A good friend of mine who lives in Germany mentioned this to me back in 2016, and I had no idea what it was because it was not something that was introduced to me in my schooling or my training as a therapist. And it happens to be a treatment modality that a man called Bert Hellinger came up with in Germany, mid-century, last century, and it is very successful, and it tackles family trauma, which I thought it was super interesting because I don't know if you agree with me, Jalili, when we see our clients, unless it's family therapy or couples therapy, we focus on the individual
Mhm.
and let's do this growth. Let's focus on your change. What are your individual goals? But I started understanding that people have baggage, that people have family, that people have connections. And this is so important to understand as well. Because when you talk to a client, you go like, well, my mom did this and now I'm finding myself doing it. And my grandma did it too. And that's a family thing and we cannot escape it. It becomes like you were mentioning a curse, a family curse. So family constellations addresses those family traumas and the family patterns that are repeating themselves in a family system, in a clan. It is very interesting. It's very symbolic in nature, very healing. I don't know if people that are listening to us have heard of something called Gestalt therapy. So you're going to have a lot of basically symbolic talking with your family members. And that's how the healing happens.
If you've ever done the chair
Oh, the
exercise,
empty chair. Yes, yes,
the
yes,
empty
correct.
chair,
Good. Thank you, Jalili. Yes, that's an
there's
example of
Gestalt.
Gestalt therapy. But family constellations is a mixture of a lot of things. There is psychodrama, there is family systems from Virginia Satir, there is existential treatments as well applied to it, and of course, Gestalt. So, family constellations really addresses the whole family. We start by doing something called a genogram. Some of the clients may be familiar with that. And it is so important to see this family history as a visual. People sometimes go to, I don't know if I can use brand names, maybe not, but those services that you can look your ancestry by doing the DNA samples.
Mhm.
And they are just shocked with, oh, look, I got this family member here. Look at this other thing here. So they're lucky because they have that information. Some other people have a very good history and they know a lot about their family clan. And it is very helpful to understand how that plays a role in the individual's behavior and the client's behavior. Um, I'm going to talk an example about someone that migrated and as an immigrant from a difficult situation, Cuba. She was speaking to me about some things that the family was doing, like hoarding, like
Mm.
saving, like not getting rid of things. And she was talking to me about generations, entire generations that were saving, that were doing these things, that were keeping. We just make sure that we have this saved here. We make sure that we have enough. And she's like, I don't have the need to do that. But I continue to do it. And I realized that since my great grandparents, we've been doing that. So it's very interesting to see those patterns.
Yeah, and as you look through it, I imagine um, situations with mental health must come up too. Like, you start to realize, well, I didn't know that my great grandmother was a schizophrenic
Yeah.
or, had bipolar disorder or borderline. And or addiction. I didn't realize that my great great grandfather was the first person in the family to suffer from alcoholism or and I think also it might give you, at least from what I'm hearing, it might give you some insight into what you are chemically and biologically predisposed to that you need to be aware of.
Well, you start with your genogram, I'm sorry, which is
Yeah.
basically a family tree. Is a fancy name for family tree. But in the way that we do it in psychology, we have different symbols that we use to create this
That's right.
genogram, right? So in the genogram, we include mental health history, physical health history, other patterns that people may be seeing that are
Divorce,
repetitive. Yes, relationships that have been complicated, relationships that are enmeshed, relationships that are loving. So by looking at this map, we start realizing that, oh, wait a minute, this is a pattern that we have been repeating as a clan and as a family. So we start with that. And then what we try to do with family constellations is give each person their space and the family system. So, okay, I understand my uncle, I'm giving an example. For example, my uncle took his life, and I understand that this was a big family secret. So I acknowledge that my uncle is part of my family system, and I accept that things happen the way they needed to happen. We try to unveil family secrets
mhm,
and to give him a name. And it is very important too when we get into relationships with moms and children or dads and children to make sure that we say to our parents, you are the parents, I am the child, and those are the roles. Because
mhm,
basically it's all about order. It's about organizing things where they need to go. Say that you have a messy marriage and you become your spouse parent. Part of the family constellation exercise is letting you know that you're not your partner's parent. You are a partner to your partner and understanding that the two of you are equal. So giving that person the space they need in the family system, basically.
yeah, because something that you were talking about earlier is, the savior wants to save everybody. The savior becomes the social worker, the therapist, the EMT, the nurse. That's who, those are the saviors. The, you know, they they don't just try to save the family, they try to save everybody.
Everybody.
They become the enabling spouse. They become the caretaking spouse. Even when the spouse doesn't need to be taken care of, they become the caretaking spouse by taking on way more responsibility in the household than they need to, by blurring the lines between responsibilities of who does what. Instead, they take on way more than they need to. They have very poor boundaries. So when I imagine looking at family constellation and making sure, this is who I am and my identity in this
Correct.
situation, and then this is what these people's identity was in this situation.
Well,
That
yes, that it is correct, but it is extremely liberating because you're acknowledging that beyond your family history, you're grateful for that family history, but you choose not to continue to
the
repeat it
patterns.
anymore. So it is a very powerful treatment, and the exercises are designed that way that they become very very powerful to cut those patterns that have been repeating in a family. So, for example, I have a person that was telling me, I all my family tell me that I looks like my uncle so and so, and he was a mess and I don't want to be like him, and he was a little overweight and now I'm starting to get overweight. I'm scared that I'm going to repeat that. What's going to So it happens in families that we go like, okay, I'm living someone else's life. I'm following someone else's steps. So with family constellations, like I said, we want to make sure that we're grateful to our family and our ancestors for everything that they did to bring us to this point. But from here on, we're going to live our lives. Um, Key words here are blind loyalties, what Bert Hellinger called blind loyalties, and love out of sacrifice. Because contrary to what we may think, love doesn't mean you have to burn yourself to keep everyone warm. Love is something that you give and you receive at the same rate.
That's so
So
true.
basically those are the parameters of family constellations. I wish that I could spend like a whole session talking about this, but I also wanted to mention that with family trauma, we don't have a direct connection between DNA and how it carries through DNA, but there is the idea of epigenetics and the fact that maybe the family trauma has been carried on through behavior. I
Hmm.
happen to think that there is something in the DNA, like remind us where we come from. So that's why that maybe your family was a survivors. I'm sorry, of the Holocaust, and you find yourself feeling these things and having these behaviors that don't belong to you. And this is like last century, and here I am, kind of like living like a survivor of the Holocaust when that is not my story. That is someone else's, and it was passed down to me. Mhm.
I would be very surprised, and I don't know, maybe we need to do a little bit more digging into this and go more in depth with somebody out there is doing research on this, I bet you. But it
Mhm.
would be very hard for me to believe that there is no DNA trace, because think about it this way. Our ancestors learned that there were certain herbs and certain berries that could kill you through experiencing
Mhm.
the right? The death of their family members by trial and error. And in many ways, I know that's a very simple example, but in many ways, that's how human beings learn. Human beings learn and grow, and actually they evolve within the human race. They evolve through genetic understanding of this is bitter, this is sweet, this is, oh, don't smell that because don't touch that stove, don't do this. So I think experiential knowledge by observing family, by experiencing family, by sharing a DNA also becomes part of your DNA. And I can definitely say 100% without a shadow of a doubt, and this has been confirmed over and over again, that our brain certainly changes because of family trauma. And experienced trauma. Like that has been
Yeah.
proven. There's plenty of evidence to that. So how could our essential makeup and just the information that our DNA carries, how can it not? Um, on a very basic level as well, like being more hyperactive, more hyper aware, being easier, having a more difficult time coping with certain things versus other people that can. I don't know. I think that it definitely has a basis in truth.
Yes, but I don't think we have the technology yet to pinpoint if this is 100% a thing or not. But that's
Yeah.
why I was mentioning the epigenetics thing. I know that maybe late or last century people were doing a regression therapy as part of clinical work, and I happen to think, this is just me, that maybe you're tapping into family memories through your own DNA. Like this is someone up your tree that was doing that, and you are getting this information somehow. But I can tell you without getting weird that definitely the way we understand that trauma is passed down generationally is through parenting styles, of course, and the narrative that we get from family, right? Like, oh, don't forget your grandmother that did this and she had to migrate from the old country and they barely had something to eat. So we better be grateful. That kind of a situation. I think it happens a lot. Also, emotion regulation and how that happens in a family, right? So you're right. A lot we learn probably from DNA, but a lot also comes from our experience within that
Mhm,
family that has been
mhm.
replicating over and over and over for decades or centuries.
Um, the I don't know if we have enough time because this part is heavy. Um, but there's obviously the idea that some people have that, they have the family curse or, that they're just, well, uh, all of the women in our family have gone through this. This is just the family curse, there's a lot of belief that says there are a lot of people that believe in that believe, well, this is just how it's always been, and I don't think I can be the one to change it. Um, so I'm helpless against it. What do you think about that concept?
Yeah, I think again, it's just the lack of understanding that you are not alone. You're part of a system that has been moving with a lot of complicated gears and parts. So that's why it is important to do something like family constellations, incorporating that into your individual treatment. Because, yes, you can understand all day long, this is how I think, this is how I behave, this is how I feel. Let's try to change that. But the family curses, as you're saying, I think that that's something that goes more into the family history and the family clan. So I'm not saying that family constellations is the only way to get out of that family curse,
Mm,
but definitely it's one of the avenues to do that, to heal. I think that family therapy is extremely important when people have the opportunity to do this. Let's say for the people that are going through divorce, it's a good idea that you go with your kiddios to a family practitioner and you talk about the family roles and all these things to kind of like prevent the
mhm,
curse from
mhm.
continuing to happen.
I
But
agree.
yeah. So
I
there
think
are
that
ways. Hmm?
personally, I think that the curse truly is the person accepting this has the ultimate fact, the ultimate reality. I think
Yeah.
that's the true curse. I think that the more a person allows themselves to take ownership of something that was never meant for them, the more the person allows themselves to take ownership of it, the more they allow it to become who they are, even to the point where you almost turn it into your God, where this is who I am, this is what I worship, this is what what I believe. Like, the more you do that, the more cursed you're going to feel because the more helpless you're going to feel. And the harder it's going to be for you to accept the fact that you can change and that you can overcome that. That's what I think it really truly becomes the curse.
This is correct at a cognitive level. And cognitive behavioral level, I feel you're 100% correct. But I know we don't have a lot of time. I just wanted to explain a little bit of my experience with the family constellations thing. I fell into it because I was looking for deeper healing with family relationships. I had a really bad situation going on with my biological father that I had to work on. I did EMDR, I did talk therapy, I did all kinds of healing. I prayed to God to please deliver me from this. And I didn't realize how deep it was affecting me. And then going up in my family tree, what happened? A long line of badass women that are alone, fighting, that are lovers, but that are absolutely empty because they love with everything they have and they end up that way. So you have to do the role of the mom and the dad. You have to be kind of like Wonder Woman, and that has been one of the things that I identified for a long time with. I was proud of being this, strong woman. I can do it. I can do both. I can take care of this. Just bring it on. And then realizing with the family constellations, I'm sorry, that that's not my role. And I'm allowed to be soft and I'm allowed to just forgive and truly accept things the way they were. So it is absolutely healing in deeper levels. That is
Yeah,
my experience. But it helped me with my role that I thought that I had.
right. And it could have continued to be the curse of all the women in your family if you had not gone through the steps of
Correct. Good
recognizing
point.
I need to make a change. I need to work on this. It's something that's urgent for me to recognize and to work on and to overcome
But the funny part, Jalili, is that we don't realize that this is affecting us as adults. We think that this is who we are, right? Like, let's say,
identity.
as a family hero, we assume that we have to be burned out all the time. We have to people please all the time. We have to be resistant to difficulty and take it all because I'm the family hero. What do you mean? So when we look deeper, that's when we realize that there are family wounds in place.
One last thing I want to mention, um, and in another episode, we will go over maybe a little bit more of the step by steps that maybe you can do to overcome this. But one thing I definitely don't want to end before I mention there's something that you gain every single time you choose an identity. There's something that you lose, which is all other possibility. And there's something that you gain, which is whatever that identity somehow gives you just so you can survive it. So it's, I give a word of caution for everybody that has accepted their identity as fact and has accepted their role has their identity and has who they are as a person and what gives them worth. I give a word of caution of there's a lot more that you lose than what you gain by putting yourself in that position and holding yourself only accountable to being that one thing because growth comes and healing comes only when you choose to step outside the box and actually start questioning everything. You should be always questioning everything. Do I like this? Why do I like it? Where does it come from? Is this me? Do I enjoy the things I
It's
wear? The food I eat? The why do I enjoy it? Why did I choose to dress this way? Why have I always had this same haircut? Why, you know, I think that you can definitely learn a lot about yourself and learn to love yourself better if you step outside the box.
It is hard to realize what your role is in a family dynamic because you live in that dynamic and you may feel like that's the norm. So, for the listeners, I just want to say a couple more things before we wrap it up. Do you feel like you're making look the family look okay and that's your role? Most likely you're going to be a hero. Do you feel like you're carrying the family pain and the anger? Most likely you're a scapegoat. Do you feel like you're disappearing to avoid the conflict or make the conflict better? You probably are the lost child. Do you feel like your role is distracting and lighten the mood within the family? Most likely you're the mascot or the clown. And lastly, do you feel like you take care of everyone? Then evidently you're a caregiver or a parentified child. And I wanna just wrap up with those
Yes.
questions.
Yes. And every in every one of those roles, you're going to feel a certain level of satisfaction whenever you succeed in completing the role or successfully playing the role, and the family will encourage that to keep going, and they will even applaud your efforts, like by coming more to you, being more dependent on you, by laughing at your jokes, by always talking about you in a wholehearted manner. They will oftentimes they will reinforce that, and you will feel like that's the thing you're gaining. You're gaining the satisfaction of being the protector, the savior, the caregiver, the parentified person that is helping everybody else. There's a lot to gain from that, but there's also a lot to lose because you're not giving yourself the opportunity to learn who you really are and what your worth as a human being is.
Yeah, that's
So
correct.
right, so has has you listened to this episode, you may be tempted to start asking, is this everything I want to be? Is this all that I am? Is this where my worth is? Is this what I identify myself as? And is that enough for me? Does it make me happy? Do I feel satisfied with myself? Can I look at myself in the mirror and say I'm satisfied with who I am and what my identity is? Or does it feel like I wear a mask every day? Does it feel like I put on a show every day? Does it feel like I hold things back for the sake of other people? Does it feel like nobody really knows me? Like, what is really what you see in the mirror? Um, and maybe that can be the start of you starting to find your true identity instead of just defining yourself through the eyes of other people. Um, with that said, I know that was a heavy last message, but with that said, um, we love you. You're worthy. You're amazing.
You
Um,
belong.
you belong just by the fact that you are here and that you're part of this universe and that you have all the potential in the world. Um, that's your worth. You're a ball of light filled with potential. Um, and we love you for it. And we really, really hope that this podcast is helping you gain a little bit more insight and you can continue to listen and enjoy. And as always, we're open to your suggestions. And if you want to be part of the podcast, feel free to send us an email, contact us at the traveling therapist one at gmail.com. And yeah, we will be talking to you guys on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.